Yo, what's going down, Green Screen Entertainment fans? Your boy Jay Green back with another review. Now today I'm gonna give y'all 8mm. This film is, to me, a highly overlooked Nicolas Cage classic. Now I say it's a Nick Cage classic because this is back in the day when he was reeling in the emotions. We're not getting no Wicker Man Nicolas Cage. Also, it's overlooked because to me, I noticed that a lot of critics were not big fans of this film, but a lot of random moviegoers did give it a thumbs up. So I'm gonna get into why I think that was. I'm also gonna get into some light spoilers only because of the fact is I need to break them down in order to give you a true understanding as to why I feel like this movie is as great as I think that it is. Also, I'm gonna do something that I've never done before, and I'm gonna actually attach this movie to two other films. I'm gonna do somewhat of a short mini-series on director Joel Schumacher. What? Him? Yeah, him. Yo, let's get after it. Alright fam, so I'm going to break down the basic plot just like this. So Nicolas Cage is in surveillance and private detective work. Because of the work that he's in, he sees a lot of awful and gruesome things quite often. Because of that, he keeps himself somewhat reserved from his family. He just had a baby girl with his wife. You would think it's a happy family, but his wife is actually quite resentful of all the time that he's spending at work. Now, keep in mind, he's doing this because he's a hardworking man trying to provide for his family and his daughter's future. Good things, right? But at the same time, he's also putting himself in harm's way, and he's out of his daughter's young life as she's developing not the best look in the world. Now, with all that said as to what's going on at home, he ends up taking this job for this giant tycoon, this big old media mogul, if you will. Now, just to give you an idea how giant this dude is in the media game, let's just compare him to like a Jeff Bezos or a Mark Zuckerberg in one way or another. Not to say that them cats are anything like the dude in this film, but just to say this guy has Scrooge McDuck paper. So he shows up to this guy's house. Now we, the audience, then find out that this dude actually passed away just recently, and he's left behind a wife, an older wife, a woman who's probably not in the best health herself, but is very distraught and heartbroken at the time, and hires him to find out a very important fact. In this guy's safe, in this office that like nobody goes into, she called a locksmith over, cracked it open, and found an 8mm film. On this film was a nasty old school swag type porno, one that was very low budget, shot in some kind of shack somewhere, who knows where. But in the end of the movie, what's most important is that the girl in the film gets murdered very viciously. I'm talking about Mike Myers swag sliced and diced. Okay, so needless to say, she's horrified. What the hell has my man been watching? What has he been doing with his spare time? But more important, is this film real? So she lets Nick Cage watch the film and hires him to be the private detective that's gonna track down who this girl was, where's she from, who made the tape, is it real, authenticated, all that type of swag. So that's basically what we're watching in this film. Nick Cage as a private detective on this crazy missing person slash manhunt into the underbelly society of porn. Ugh, disgusting. Now that we got that out the way, what did your homie love about this movie? Number one, it delivered multiple times on the promise of its premise. This movie basically told us that we gonna see some horrible, unspeakable acts on this tape. We do. This movie also tells us that Nicolas Cage's character is going into a world to which he is not prepared for. A world that he's not going to be able to unsee and unrealize is actually out there. A guy with a young daughter going into this world. He does. We see it. We experience it. We feel nasty and filthy from experiencing it with his character as he's going through it. And in the end of the film has been leading up to this person who actually did the murder on the tape. And when this person says why he did it, what drove him to do it, it might be the most chilling thing that I've ever heard out of any main villain. A horror villain, a stalker type villain, a crazy dude in the movie trying to blow up an airport for some money, for some paper. It don't matter what their reasoning is. Okay, this guy's reason might be a bit more terrifying. Another thing that I really enjoyed with this movie was the acting. We got Catherine Keener, we got James Gandolfini, an early James Gandolfini. I'm talking about before Sopranos, acting his ass off in this movie, for real though, okay? We got Joaquin Phoenix with a nice little crop top. All right, and we got old school Nicolas Cage. I'm talking about before Wicker Man, when Nicolas Cage was reeling back some of the emotions, not blowing it off the top, acting unrealistic. When he really lets it fly in this film, when emotion really takes his character over, and I'll talk about it in a second, it is warranted. It makes sense. You are not laughing at that moment because you'd probably be doing the same stuff if you had the opportunity. Now let's talk directing. I think that Joel Schumacher directed his ass off in this movie. Now, keep in mind that 2 years prior, Joel Schumacher came out with Batman and Robin, arguably, in fact, factually, if you ask me personally, one of the worst effing films to ever hit the cinema. That movie damn near sank Batman the franchise. My God, I hated Joel Schumacher when he came out with that movie, okay? But 2 years later, he comes out with this. And because of his direction, he was able to get great performances out of his actors. Some of y'all out there that are amateur moviegoers, not cinephiles like myself, might not understand why an actor 1 year in one film can have the worst performance ever, but then in the next year, in another film, be nominated for an Academy Award. Halle Berry, Catwoman, Monsters Ball. Let's talk about it. Now, it's not always because of talent. Sometimes it's because of direction. If the director can work with the actor or actress and give them an understanding as to the world that they're in, backstory, and the emotions that they should be pulling out of them at that time, it's going to fit that much better within the story as a whole, okay? And also, if they can show us, the audience members, all of that and put it throughout the film in the right positions, when that real emotional moment is supposed to jump off, we believe the hell out of it. There's a scene in this movie where Nicolas Cage, multiple scenes really, where Nicolas Cage meets the girl in the video, meets her mom. Okay? And the mom is just broken inside. She is nothing without her daughter, without knowing where her daughter's at. She's been missing all these years. She has got no answers. It's like they stopped looking for her. She is devastated. If anybody out there has ever dealt with a missing person in your life, you yourself, then you probably understand what this woman is going through. She is done. And you can tell she's acting amazing, okay? But there's a time in the film where Nicolas Cage finally tells her what's up, and she blows up with emotion. Nicolas Cage at the same time on the other side of the phone, they're not even in the same room, blows up with emotion. And unless you're heartless, you as an audience member feel that. But if Joel Schumacher did not put certain things, certain topics of conversations and certain phrasings and this and that throughout the film in just the right way, then when that phone call happens, we don't feel that emotional impact. And we don't believe Nicolas Cage's next set of actions after that phone call. Phenomenal, if you ask me. Now, I'm not going to give you all the details to how this movie ends because I want you to go watch this movie. I think this movie is great. I saw it on Amazon. It was free with Amazon Prime. Now, the way that this movie ends, I will say this, ties everything up very nice, okay? There's an ending for the widow, there's an ending for her estate, there's an ending for the mom, there's an ending for Nicolas Cage and his wife, okay? But what's best about all of these endings, at least to me, is that they make sense based on everything that this movie told us was in this particular world and universe of this guy, okay? Some movies have a detective or a police officer or somebody figuring something out, and then they all of a sudden have some type of actions that don't really fit that person's character. Either A, it's just completely out of left field what they're about to do, or B, the movie didn't build us into their actions enough. This movie, I feel, gives us all of that, so then when the end comes, you're very much so satisfied with what you saw. All right, y'all, now I'm about to hit you with the end of the video, but first, if you have not liked, if you have not subscribed, please do so right now, especially if you made it this far. It would be much appreciated. It helps me out, helps out my channel. Thank you in advance. Now, why I don't think the critics liked it, I don't really know. I don't read a whole lot of critics' reports because I don't want their thoughts coming into my thoughts. I like to make my own decisions, okay? But what I will say is I think that this movie had an interesting plot. I think that this movie addresses an issue in the world. There is porn out there. There are people that are into some wild stuff. Okay? And this movie showcases it, so maybe sometimes you don't like something just because of how uncomfortable it makes you. And maybe that's why they didn't like it. But it definitely has a favorable rating from fans on Rotten Tomato, and it definitely has a favorable rating from me. So I do suggest that you check it out. And around Halloween time, even though it's not really a scary movie, it's a pretty terrifying film. So check it out for sure, for sure. The other thing is, why am I doing a miniseries on Joel Schumacher? Well, I'm not really doing a miniseries on Joel Schumacher. I'm just doing 3 films. The other films that I'm going to do, the next one is going to be Falling Down with Michael Douglas, and then the one after that is going to be A Time to Kill. You see, I was actually watching A Time to Kill a couple of weeks back, listening to all these news reports about all this wild nonsense, the lack of justice for people like Breonna Taylor, okay, and George Floyd. All that stuff really amounted to what? Not really much. And as a black man in America, it affects me. So I wanted to watch a movie at that time that was realistic and dealing with a lot of the same things that we're still dealing with today. And that movie came out ages ago, but at the same time had a happy ending. Now I know what you're thinking, but Jay Green, do you know what that movie's about? Of course I know what it's about. I own the film on DVD. But spoiler alert, the black guy wins in the end of this one. So as I'm watching the credits roll after the film ends, because of course a movie like that, you're just gonna sit there and kind of take it in for a second, I see Joel Schumacher direct it, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I completely forgot about that. But it made me think, damn, how does Joel Schumacher like go to ruining Batman for like a good period of time by making 2 of the worst Batman films ever made, number 1, and arguably one of the worst films ever made in general in Batman and Robin. And then he makes a movie like A Time to Kill. Then I thought, what else has he made? He made Falling Down with Michael Douglas. I really enjoyed that film, okay? Then I think, what else did he make? And I was like, oh snap, I remember. He made 8mm. This is actually a suspenseful thriller, and it came out after Batman and Robin. Is Joel Schumacher really that bad of a director, or just misunderstood for 2 films? I don't know, but it got me to thinking I want to review all 3 of these films and talk about it just a little bit. So that's why I'm going to be doing a little mini series, if you will, on those 3 films and director Joel Schumacher and what may have gone wrong. I don't know. But yo, if I gave you enough insight to want to check this film out, something that maybe you missed back in the day, or something that you might be interested in, a detective movie that brings them into the underbelly of society, or something that most people laugh at and make jokes about, but probably has some dark edges, if you feel me on that, do me a favor and give me a like and a subscribe. Yeah, homie, I'm out.